then the name of the exception you are trying to create, and then extends exception. So in Java, any exception you create will be a subclass of the exception superclass. Okay. So the first class of the exception is throwable. From throwable, there are two subclasses, exception and error. And then from exception, there are 4 to 5 subclasses. We know runtime exception is one of them. So any subclasses of the runtime exception class are called the unchecked exception. Other than that, everyone else is checked exception. So you can see that as my exception extending exception, but not a runtime exception. So any user defined exception is actually the checked exception. Okay, why? Because this is not a subclass of runtime exception, but it is a subclass of exception. So any exception you create yourself will be a checked exception. Now it has one instance variable like any other class. It's called detail, and the constructor which will initialize the detail. And any exception will have, if you remember, in case of C++, I have a what method. In the same way here, it is two-string method. Every class in Java has a two-string method, which will do what? Which will change the description of the class to a human readable format. So in this case, for an exception class, it will tell you that this is your exception with this. This is the erroneous input, or this is the erroneous state of your variable, or anything for which you are getting this exception. This detail it will show you. Okay. So it is up to you that how you will override this two-string method of the object class. As exception class is a subclass of the object class, so any object in Java will have this two-string method. Okay, it is up to you how you will override. In this example, it is written that it will return the string my exception plus within third bracket the value for which the exception is being thrown. Now let us see how it is being used. So this is the class exception demo, and these two lines are actually comment lines. Okay, so it is saying that the static compute method throws the my exception whenever it is argument is greater than 10. So so compute is a method which is taking one integer argument, and it is saying throws my exception. Why it is necessary to write throws my exception? Because first of all, my exception is a checked exception, and as we all know that whenever any method may throw a checked exception but it will not handle it using the try catch block, then it is a must for the method to declare that I might throw this exception which I am not handling using the throws clause. Otherwise, what will happen? You will get compile time error. Compiler will not allow your program to compile. So static void compute, this is a method which might throw my exception, which is a checked exception. Inside compute, this exception is not handled, so it is saying to the caller method. We will see who is the caller method in a minute. So inside here it is written called compute with this argument. Okay, and if a is greater than 10, then throw new my exception 1. So what my exception a. So what is the here? What is the use of throw? To throw a exception yourself, manually throwing an exception. Okay, and we know how to throw an exception. You need to create an object of the exception, and in Java you create the exception using, you create an object using the new keyword. So new my exception within bracket a. So with that line, I am doing what? I am calling the constructor of the my exception class with that particular integer value argument. Okay, and then it is saying that if a is not if a is greater than 10, then obviously you have thrown the exception. Good. In that line of code, no other line of code, no remaining line of code in the compute method will ever be executed if you have thrown the exception. If not, then I am coming to the next line, then it will print out the normal exit and your compute method will end. Now, who is the caller method of the compute method? It is public static void main. Okay. So inside public static void main, I am calling compute with the value 1 and with the value 20. Now, I am assuming that obviously as I'm calling the compute method, I know that it throws my exception and it is declaring it. That means compute method is not handling the my exception, and so I am keeping the call of the method inside the try block, and outside the try block, inside catch block, I am catching this my exception e, and I am printing caught plus e. So what it will print? Caught plus e. That means whenever I try to print an object of a particular class, the toString method is getting called by default. So it will print that caught my exception plus the value of the detail and then the third bracket. Okay, that is what it will print. I am not running this program. It is I will request you to run the program and see that what will be the output. Okay. Now I will show you one of my program and I will run it. Okay. So here, can you see the notepad? I am showing you the.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I am here creating a new exception named not equal exception. You can see that whenever I am creating a new exception, I am writing extends exception. That means any exception you create will be the subclass of the exception superclass. After that, I have kept one instance variable float a, okay, and the constructor will just assign the a, the instance variable a with the local variable x, and then the toString method. In the toString method, it is up to you that what value you want to return. I want to return that float value this is not equal to pi. So when this exception will be thrown, whenever user has given some value and which is not equal to pi 3.14, then this exception will be thrown. Okay, so let us see how.
ম্যাম এখানে স্ট্রিং টু স্ট্রিংটা কেন লিখেছেন এখানে পাবলিক স্ট্রিং টু স্ট্রিং
I have already discussed that what is the public to string method whenever I was discussing this exception. Did you hear, Pranay?
আমার একটু প্রবলেম হচ্ছিল মানে মানে ভলিউমে একটু নেট
It's a public string to string method is a method. It is given in the object class. Any object in Java, so that means any class can override that to string method. What does to string method do? Whenever you are trying to print an object of any class, the toString method by default is getting called. So whenever will be right, the toString method will return you some human readable description of your object or of your class. Okay. So whenever you are trying to print an object, then the toString method will be called, and whatever you write here, it will be printed. Okay. So in case
Yes,
of
ma'am.
exception, I want to print that which exception is getting thrown for which value. So here I have written toString method, and the description I am giving here is float variable is not equal to pi 3.14. That description I want to give. It is up to you that what description you want to return for your exception.
Yes, ma'am.
Now as I in the previous class I shown you that I have shown you that how to use the scanner class. Now you see here the first line for the using scanner class is import java.util.star. So scanner, s capital scanner, is a class in this package Java within this sub package util. There are many other classes. Among them I am using the scanner class here. So how to use
ম্যাম
the
ডট স্টারটা ইম্পর্টেন্ট ডট স্টার
you can also write java.util.scanner semicolon. If you want to use only the scanner class of util, that also you can write. Now I am creating an object of the scanner class, and see, you can see that here system.in is the constructor. It is taking system.in as an argument. What is system.in? System.in is the default input device, that is your keyboard. So whatever you will give from your keyboard, input you will give from your keyboard, this sc object will read that. Okay. Now you'll printing enter value to the float variable, and how to get the input to a float variable using scanner class. You can see that this is the method sc.nextFloat. This method you need to call. If you want to take input for an integer variable, you write next int. If you want to take the variable input for double, you write next double. In the same way, next char. In the same way, next will take the whole line. Sorry, next will take the word, next word, and next line will take the whole line. Okay, in this way. Now, I'm not sure about the next char. Probably there is no method called next char. There is two method for taking string value. One is next, which will take a next word, and another is next line, which will take the whole line. That means next line will stop getting the input when it will see an enter, and next method will stop getting the input when it will see a space. Okay, and then I am printing the value. Then after that, you see it is printed that absolute difference between value and val and pi is what is the difference I am printing. And then whenever the difference is greater than 0.001, then I am throwing my exception. Okay, then I'm catching this exception, and not equal exception caught plus the description I have given. What description I have given? Not equal exception caught plus this float variable, this is not equal to pi, this will be written. Here you can see from main method itself, I am throwing the exception and catching it. And another example I have already shown you, when main method is calling another method, and inside that method I am just declaring that this method may throw this user defined exception and throwing it. And here from the main method I am just catching the thrown exception and handling it. But in this example, my example, I am throwing and catching the exception in the main method itself. Okay, now let us see how my exception my program is will execute. Okay, so Java exception test, say I am giving the value of 3.15. Oh, sorry, 3.15. কোথায় গেল? 5 5টা আবার প্রিন্ট হচ্ছে 5 3.15. So it is given the value is 3.15, and absolute difference between 3.14 and 3.15 is 0.009999 whatever, and then not equal exception caught. Float variable 3.15 is not equal to pi, that is 3.14. Now again I'll run, and then if I say like 3.14, okay, you can see that there is no exception caught, because the absolute difference between val and pi is 0.00, which is not greater than 0.001. Okay, and that is why that is the purpose of this program, to create the whole exception and how to use that. Is there any doubt regarding this?
मैं वो कोड देखाবেন প্লিজ?
Should I scroll up?
यस ম্যাম। ম্যাম এখানে আপনি ক্লাস না ক্যাচ নট ইকুয়াল এক্সেপশন ইটা কি, ওটা অবজেক্ট কল করেছেন না
Which one, sorry?
ম্যাম? এখানে ক্যাচ নট ইকুয়াল এক্সেপশন এই ইটা তো অবজেক্ট কল করেছেন না, নট ইকুয়াল এক্সেপশন ক্লাসের।
So in this line, in the first in this line, throw new not equal exception val, I am throwing a new exception whenever my condition met, and inside this catch I am catching that exception. And why I am catching that exception? So that I can handle it properly.
Yes ma'am. Okay ma'am.
Hmm.
You understood
So
ma'am?
no doubt. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we will discuss what is a thread, and why should we learn thread. And then in this class today, I will discuss about the two methods to create and use the thread. And then in the next class, I will discuss about what is a synchronization. Okay, now for your information, if I send you the mail that I'll take class tomorrow, then you understand that I will take the theory class. From now onwards, I am not interested to take the lab class anymore. I will send you the slides sorry, I will send you the assignments, as well as I am asking you to deciding to send you the programs as well, so that those who cannot do the program themselves can take help of my program, and those who can do, I will request you to not see my solution and do it yourself, and then you can refer to my solution whether what is expected from you, you are getting that, you are doing that what is expected from you. Because in the lab classes I did not find it much useful for most of the class, because 2 or 3 people or some few people showed me the program, who can, I very well know that who can do the program themselves and know that the programs are fine. Okay, the comparatively weak students in the coding, they do not show the programs frequently, and so I decided to not waste the time anymore. So till I finish the syllabus, I will take only the theory classes. And as I do not know whether in December there will be exam, I suppose no. And as we have time, so we are not in a rush or hurry to finish the syllabus in 2 days time. If it is got finished in 2 days time, it is fine. Then we will not meet online. If you have any queries to me, then please you are requested to email me, not WhatsApp, not SMS. Please email me or post your queries in classroom, so that if your queries is being answered, then many of your friends will get the help. Okay, so that's what I request you to do. And now with gradually, slowly we will go and we will finish the syllabus. Not a problem. Okay. Now, why we use thread? And first of all, what is thread? So before going to that, say suppose that whenever you are you are studying OS in the semester. No, in the last semester you have studied OS. No?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so you know already that what is multitasking, multiprocessing, multi-threading.
Yes, ma'am.
So still, then again I will take some 1 or 2 minutes to say why we need thread here. Okay. So say suppose whenever you are transmitting some data over a network, or maybe you are printing some file, printing some output, or maybe you are waiting for the user input, or maybe you are reading or writing, reading from a file or writing into a file, then you know that these things are much slower than your CPU, and CPU is decided. I am sharing the CPU time between different processes or maybe different threads. Okay. So that means what? Whenever some user is giving input, CPU should not be sitting idle. It should do execute some other process waiting in the process queue. Now there are different scheduling algorithm for doing that. You know that, but FCFS, then priority scheduling, then shortest job first, likewise. So those things we can share the CPU time, and then your CPU can be utilized in a far better way. Okay. Now multitasking can be done in 2 ways. One is multiprocessing, another is multi-threading. So thread is what? Thread is a path of execution in a process. Okay. So there can be several paths. That means in a process there can be several threads. Okay. So for different threads, what is the why we should use thread and not process? Because process is heavyweight, and communication between process is also expensive, and then context switching in process is also time consuming and expensive, because you know what is context switching. So from one process to another process, when we jump, then we need to store many things, like say program counter, then local variable values, and all those registers we need to save, and that is called the context switching. No, I am not presenting pronoun. Okay, so that is called context switching. So all these things are very heavyweight and expensive. But unlike processes, threads are lightweight, so they share the same address space of a process. Multiple threads share a same address space of a process, and so the context switching and the communication between threads, these are inexpensive, and so we want to do that. Okay, but remember that stacks and program counters are independent for the threads, different threads. Only address space and all those are shared between two threads, like between multiple threads of a particular process. So in Java, okay, the thread life cycle I need to discuss with you. So this is my thread life cycle. Whenever I'll create an object of a particular thread, we know that everything in Java is an object. So obviously any thread I create is again another object of the thread class. Okay. Now Pranay, I am presenting. So anybody who cannot see the screen, please let me know. So whenever I'm creating a new object of a thread, the thread is in the born state. Okay. Now in the thread class, there is one method called start. So start method, whenever I will call the start method, thread goes from born to runnable state. Now you know that threads are asynchronous. What is asynchronous?
Ma'am, that the slides can't be seen.
Okay. Okay.
And
Let,
ma'am, your voice is also unclear.
okay. Let me see. Now can you see?
Yes,
Can you
ma'am.
see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So whenever I will create an object of the thread is in the born state. Okay. And then whenever I will call the born state means just born. The thread is just born. That means I have created an object using the constructor of the thread class. Okay. And then whenever I will call the start method of the thread class, it will be in the will be in the runnable state. Now why this is the runnable state and not running? Now you see threads are asynchronous. Asynchronous means what? It doesn't work like this thread stops executing and then the second thread will start executing. You never know that when which thread is getting the CPU time. Okay. So you can never specify the order of the threads are getting in the order in which the threads are getting executed. So all the threads are asynchronous. The thread which will get the CPU time at that particular moment will be executed. And who will get the CPU time when? That CPU, like your OS, your OS will decide depending upon the CPU scheduling algorithm your OS follows. Clear? Now all the threads will be waiting in the thread pool. Okay? And everyone who is waiting in the thread pool to be run or to get the CPU time is called they are the runnable state. Every thread is in the runnable state who are waiting for their turn or their share of the CPU. Okay. So when the CPU actually choose one thread, they are in the active state. So in the active state, what does they do? They do everything whatever you have written in the run method. That means the run method signature is public void run. That run method is another method of the thread class. So one method is start, which will make the thread to the runnable state, which will change the thread state from the born state to runnable state. And then whenever CPU chooses this thread to be run, then it will be inside the run method. Nobody can call run method. Run method is being executed by itself whenever this thread is inside the CPU. Okay, so nobody can call run. Start will eventually call run when the CPU is available for that particular thread. Now say suppose the thread is waiting in the waiting for the some input, or maybe another thread suspended it, or maybe thread sleeps for some seconds. Okay, then that thread goes from active state to blocked state. So from active active state, it will is sleeping. And then when the this, what is this 500 within bracket 500, this is the time in millisecond for what, for during that time thread will sleep. Okay, thread will be inactive, or thread will be in the blocked state. Okay, so after 500 millisecond thread will wake up, and then what will happen, then again thread will be in the runnable state. That means when one thread is sleeping, or maybe suspended by other thread, or maybe blocked on IO, that means something is printing, or maybe user is giving input. So what will happen, that thread will be blocked state, and another thread which is active now will get the share of the CPU, so that CPU does not sit idle. Okay, maximum utilization of the CPU will happen then. Okay, and then whenever from the sleep it will wake up, from the suspend it will resume, from the wait state it will be notified, or maybe block on IO, and then again IO is available. After everything it will again be in the runnable state and wait for the CPU in the thread pool or the CPU queue. Okay, and then again when the OS will decide that okay, now this thread will be inside the CPU, then that thread will be active. Okay, and from runnable state, whenever the stop method is getting called, so you can call the stop method. Okay, so stop method is getting called, then the thread will be dead. Okay, so when a thread is dead after stop method, it can again never be run again. You need to create a particular thread to run. So from blocked state it can be runnable and then running, but from the dead state it can never be runnable and then running. Okay,
ম্যাম বলছি ডেড স্টেটটা কি ফাইনাল স্টেট?
dead state টা হচ্ছে right the final state when your thread is not needed anymore. Okay, so thread exists in several states, that is ready to run, that is runnable, then running. First there will be born, and then ready to run, that is runnable, then running. A running thread can be suspended, and suspended thread can be resumed. A thread can be blocked when waiting for a resource, and a thread can be terminated. Once terminated, a thread cannot be resumed. So whenever suspended, for suspended or blocked, there are many reasons. One is the method called suspend, or another is another thread wants this thread to wait, and wait why one particular thread will want that another thread must wait. We will learn that when we will learn thread synchronization, thread communication, we will learn that. Okay, why this wait and notify method is needed, and then the thread might be sleeping. Now in Java there are two ways to create thread and use thread. One is extending thread class, another is implementing runnable interface. Okay, so acha, before that, whatever I have told you, what is the reason for multi-threading, multitasking, and differences between multi-threading and multitasking, all those things are written already in these slides. Okay, I have already shared those slides, you can go and check. Now acha, the states are written for you clearly, properly, so that whenever in the exam, if the question comes, right, write thread life cycle or describe what is runnable state or something like that, then along with drawing this picture, you can also write some 2 to 3 lines for every state. Okay, not a whole paragraph like this it is needed, but maybe 1, 2 to 3 lines for every state, and depending upon your question, like the marks given to your question also. Okay,
ম্যাম
always
বলছি অ্যাক্টিভ স্টেটটা কি রানিং স্টেট?
right, active state is the running state. When a thread is in the running state, then it will do whatever you have written in the public void run method.
ওকে
Now to create a new thread, you can extend either the thread class, or you can implement the runnable interface. Now you tell me that when to use extending thread class and when to use runnable interface, because both will do the same thing. Now so when we use interface, whenever we try to do multiple inheritance, like try to implement multiple inheritance, that means whenever my thread class will extend another class, my class will extend another class and also want to create the thread, then what we will do, I will extend that class and implement runnable interface. Runnable interface will only have one abstract method, that is public void run. Okay, so and when my class will not need other methods of the thread class to override, then also I will need to I should implement the runnable interface. When should I need to extend the thread class? When along with run method I will override other methods of the thread class, and I will not use multiple inheritance, because we know whenever if I extend one particular class I cannot extend other classes, so then I need not use extending thread class method to create the new thread. Okay, now whenever we will learn applet, then we will see that my class will extend applet and implement runnable interface, because whenever I will run an applet, or along with that I want to run it via thread programming, then I will do that. Okay, now some methods of the thread class. One is start. So whenever I will call this start method, it will be a runnable state. I tell you very clearly that start does not call run. In this way, you cannot say that start calls run, because nobody calls run until and unless your CPU is available for the thread, and CPU scheduling algorithm chooses your thread to be inside the CPU. But thread eventually calls run, because why? Whenever sorry, not thread, start eventually calls run. Why? Because start make the thread as a runnable, that means it is waiting for the CPU, and then whenever CPU chooses your thread, then it will be inside the run method. Sleep means suspend a thread for a period of time. That means, say whenever I am waiting for some other thread to get the CPU, also then I'll be sleeping. And then run means entry point for a thread. That means whenever you will whatever you will write in the run method, that will be executed when your thread is running inside the CPU. Then join means wait for other thread to terminate and join you. We will see via an example. Is alive means it returns a boolean value if a thread is still running or not. If is alive is true, that means your thread is inside the run method. If is alive is false, then that means your thread is outside the run method. Then get priority and get name. We will see that whenever a thread is being created, there are three things. One is the name, another is the priority, and another is the thread group name. So get priority and get name. In the same way, set priority and set name. Set priority will change the priority of a thread, and set name will change the name of a particular thread. And get name and get priority just obtains the priority of the thread and the thread's name. The thread priority will be from 1 to 10, the priority values. By default, whenever a thread is being created, the priority is 5, the middle value. You can
Ma'am,
change the, please, yes.
স্লিপ যেটা আছে ওটা কি ডেড স্টেপে চলে যায়, ডেডে হয়ে যায় স্লিপটা কি?
No, it is written there, suspend the thread for a period of time. So it will be in block state. It is written there, suspend the thread for a period of time. It did not say it stop the thread. Stop method stops the thread. You can very well here, you can see here Pranay, it is written sleep within bracket 500. That means for 500 millisecond the state. Does sleep changes it to the dead state? No. Only stop method will change the thread state into the dead state. Let's go to the code. Now here you see class new thread implements runnable. So you understand what is a runnable. Runnable is an interface. In this interface there is only one method, that is called public void run. So any class which will implement the runnable interface, that means that class wants to create or use the thread, and so this class must override the public void run method. Okay, so now this is my object name of the thread class, thread T. And in the constructor, what we'll do, this is not a thread. Inside this class, this is a class which implements the runnable interface. Inside this class, I am creating a thread. This T is a thread. Okay, object of new thread is not a thread, but T is an instance variable which is a thread. So how to create? I am creating this using this constructor, new thread within bracket this and then comma demo thread. So thread class has 3 to 4 types of constructor. The first is the runnable obj. The first argument is runnable obj. Second argument is the string name, and third argument is thread group. Okay. So what is runnable obj? Runnable obj means an object of a particular class which implemented the runnable interface. So what does this mean? This means this instance, this object. Which object? Object of the new thread class. So new thread class implements runnable. So here this is a runnable object, because object of a class which implements runnable is a runnable object. So new thread within bracket this and comma demo thread. Demo thread is the name of the thread, which is a string value. Okay, so this constructor it is using. There are multiple constructor. We can see that we can use those multiple constructor to create the thread. Then whenever I'll print that child thread, what will be printed, we will explain whenever we will see the output. And then I am calling t.start. T.start will change the state of the thread from the born to runnable state. Now it is waiting. Whenever the CPU chooses this thread to be inside, to get inside, then run method will be executed. Okay, so inside run method, what I am doing, for in the for loop, I am just printing the child thread and then the value of the I, and then the thread is sleeping for 3000 milliseconds. That means for 3 seconds the thread is sleeping. Okay, now this sleep method is a static method of the thread class. You can see that with the class name dot, I am calling the sleep method. This sleep method throws interrupted exception. That means whenever a thread is sleeping, another thread can interrupt this sleep, and then the sleep method throws interrupted exception. Now here you can see that interrupted exception is a checked exception, but the method signature of the run method in the runnable interface is public void run. It is not public void run throws interrupted exception. So it is public void run only. So it is mandatory that inside the run method, if you use the sleep method of the thread class, you keep it like this inside try catch, and catch is catching the interrupted exception E, otherwise your program will not run. Okay, inside the catch I have just written the child interrupted, and then the run method is ending. Okay, so you can see try ended, catch ended, and then run method will be ended after the for loop ends. Then I will just print that exiting child thread and I am done. Now this is a class. Run method is ended and the thread class is also ended. But what about the public static void main? For that I am creating another class, and public static void main is the part of this class. Now I am just creating a new object of the new thread class. And why I am not giving any name like new thread obj equal to new thread? Because I don't need to create the object, because in the remaining lines of the program I will not create the object. I am just calling the constructor, and then inside the constructor the child thread is being created and it will start running whenever the CPU is available. Now whenever any program runs, a main thread is also running. That means whenever, this is not public static void main. So whenever a program runs, a thread also runs. This means the thread is what? A path of execution in a process. So whenever a program runs, that means you know a program in execution is called a process. So whenever a process executes, a thread executes, and that thread's name is main thread. Okay. So you can see that inside this public static void main, I am just printing that this main thread and the value of I, and this main thread is sleeping more time, 5000 millisecond, that means 5 seconds. So for in between each print statement I equal to 5 and I equal to 4, the main thread sleeps for 5 seconds. And because this is also a thread, main thread, I am calling the sleep method for the main thread. I am keeping this inside the try catch. Because why? Because sleep method throws interrupted exception. And when the for loop ends, then I will print main thread exiting, and then my program will end. Okay, so this main thread, whenever the output will be there, you can see the main thread and the child thread both will be running parallelly. Okay, and nobody is sequencing their things. Okay, so first, whenever in this line, whenever the main thread plus 5 will be printed, and in the same time, because I have already called new thread, in the same time another path of execution here will start running, which is the demo thread. That means the child thread, it will be running. So two threads, that means two path of execution will be executing parallelly, and we can see that. Let's run it once, then you will understand it.
মেইন ফাংশনটা নিচে স্ক্রল করুন।
হ্যাঁ আমি করছি, দাঁড়াও। ওকে, হ্যাঁ বলো কি প্রবলেম? থ্রেড ডেমো
নিচে স্ক্রল করতে।
ওকে, ডেমো থ্রেড না, থ্রেড ডেমো জাভাসি। Okay, so I'm compiling this program javac, and then I'll run the program. You can see first the child thread demo thread comma 5 comma main, it is being, you see some seconds gap is there. We will just see for the first time. I'll explain it in the next. Okay, so you see whenever I have printed this in this line, dara তোদেরকে দেখাই। Okay, system.out.println child thread plus t, whenever I have printed those, so you see the output child thread, and then within thread, within third bracket demo thread, the name of the thread, then the priority of the thread, and main, that means the thread group. Okay, main is the thread group for a newly created thread. Okay, that will be printed whenever you are trying to print a particular thread object. Then what will be printed? This line will be printed. So if you write system.out.println within bracket t, then this thread within bracket, the name of the thread, then priority of the thread, and the thread group, this will be printed. And then at the same time main thread and child thread is being printed, like is being running in the run method. In the run method for both of them, in the for loop, I have written like system.out.println child thread plus I, and in there I have written main thread plus I. So for the first second, both child thread and main thread are running parallelly. Okay, so 5 and 5 both is being printed. But for child thread, in between two for loop execution, there are 3 seconds gap, and for main there are 5 seconds gap. Okay, so after this 3 seconds, this child thread 4 will be printed, and after 5 seconds main thread 4 will be printed. And then after child thread 4 printed, after 3 seconds child thread 3, and after 3 seconds child thread 2 will be printed. But after main thread 4 there are 5 seconds gap, so this will be printed, and then the 5 second time gap expires and main thread 3 will be printed. And in between that, then again 3-second gap is expired and child thread 1 is being printed. Okay, after child thread 1 is being printed, you can see again main thread gets the CPU and 2 is being printed. In between, child thread exits and then main thread 1, and then after some 5 seconds gap, main thread exiting will be again printed. Now let's see the output carefully now.
Ma'am.
Okay, you see, দাঁড়াও কথা বলো না, পরে কথা বলো, হ্যাঁ একটু। 1 2 3 দেখো চাইল্ড থ্রেড 3 মেন থ্রেডের পরে দেখো হয়ে যাচ্ছে, কিন্তু 5 হয়ে গেল মেন থ্রেড 3, 1 2 3 4 5 হয়ে যাবে মেন থ্রেড 2, and then you see exiting main thread 1 will be printed now, and then 1 2 3 4 5, and then main thread exiting. Okay, now tell me what is your doubt.
ম্যাম এখানে আপনি টি ডট স্টার্ট লিখেছিলেন, ওইটা কিসের জন্য? স্টার্ট টি ডট
T
স্টার্ট।
dot Rana, start method is there to change the state of the thread from born to runnable. No, I have discussed so many things.
ও ওকে
That
ম্যাম, এটা কি
start-
বাই ডিফল্ট এই মেথডটা কি বাই ডিফল্ট?
By default means
মানে এই
this
মেথডটা
method is in the thread class. So obviously, if any thread I'm creating, it will call the method of method defined in the thread class.
ওকে ম্যাম।
So start method is defined in the thread class. So t dot start will eventually calls run.
ওকে ম্যাম।
हम फर्स्ट लाइन है वही डेमो थ्रेड 5 मेन 5 और मेन की डिनोट करছে।
5 is the priority of the thread. The default priority is the 5, and the priority goes from 1 to 10, and by default it is 5, and main is the thread group name. Okay, so we will see now the another way of creating a thread, that is extending the thread class. Okay, so you see the same program will run like this way. Say class new thread extends thread, because it is extending the thread class, so the object of the new thread is itself a thread. Clearly understood clearly? Because whenever a subclass is extending a superclass is thread, so any object of thread is a thread itself, so any object of the new thread is a thread itself. Okay, so you see here I am just calling a constructor of the thread class which will take only string input. Okay, so I am saying super, I am not writing this here, this comma I am not writing, because there are many constructor and I can use any of them. So super within bracket demo thread I am creating, and then after this system.out.println I am printing child thread plus this. What is this? This is the object of the thread class, and you understand thread class also implements the runnable interface. Thread class itself implement runnable interface. Okay, and then whenever I am writing like start, then it will start a new path of execution, and in this path I am writing this public void run. That means in this path whatever is written in the public void run will be printed, and I am keeping the public void run in the same way as the previous program to show you that you extend the thread class or you implement the runnable interface, run method will run in the same way. Okay, but only remember this, whenever you are in this constructor, you understand the new thread will start executing now whenever I am calling this start method. We are not doing like t dot start, because I have not created any t here. I have just called the superclasses constructor with the output string, with the string output demo thread, and then start method I have called because this is extending the thread class. Okay, now inside main you see I have just called the new thread classes constructor. That one, the new thread will start executing. In the same way main thread will start executing. It will sleep in between the iteration 5 seconds, and the child thread will sleep for 3 seconds in between the iteration. And in the same way we will see that extend thread will also run in the same way. Okay. Okay. Now you see, we will see one thing here. You see, even if I do not call the constructor and call the constructor of the thread class, my thread is executing. So what is happening here? So you have that you can have that confusion that, acha, let it finish, then I'll explain. Okay. So you might have the confusion that this demo thread ma'am is creating, this thread is actually running in the public void run, and that is not true. Okay. So what is running in the public void run? Any thread which does not have any particular name. Okay. So whenever you call the start method, it will start a new path of execution. Okay. So here I have created one particular thread, and I have seen that whenever I am printing this, it is telling me demo thread, comma 5, comma main. But whether this thread is executing in run? No. And how do I know? How do I know that? Say suppose after plus I give this. Okay, I give this. That means child thread plus I plus this. Okay, and say suppose I am uncommenting this line, these two line. Then it should print demo thread. Okay, let's see whether it is printing demo thread or not, or it is printing something else. Print করছে demo thread. Oh, because I have written this. Sorry. দাঁড়া এক second. Let's inside this public void run, let's print আচ্ছা কি লিখলে পাওয়া যায়? This dot get name. দাঁড়া এক সেকেন্ড, দাঁড়া একটু। Currently executing thread dot I'm forgetting that which is the currently executing thread, how to get that thread dot I forgot. Okay, in the next class I will show you. There is a method which will tell you that